Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her formal diplomatic robes one final time as the massive crystalline doors of the Galactic Assembly Hall slid open with a resonant hum. The chamber beyond defied human comprehension, a vast, spherical space where gravity worked in impossible directions, allowing delegates from 1,000 worlds to gather on surfaces that curved up and around, like the inside of a soap bubble. Bioluminescent coral formations from the Zephyrian homeworld cast dancing shadows across floating platforms, where the insectoid krill buzzed in agitated clusters. Sarah had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. Earth's first formal admission hearing before the Galactic Assembly. The governing body that had ruled over interstellar civilization for millennia. Humanity had been discovered only 3 decades ago, when their primitive radio signals finally reached Proxima Station. But their rapid technological advancement had caught the attention of several assembly factions. Some saw opportunity in this young species. Others saw threat. The human delegation consisted of only 3 individuals: Sarah herself, Dr. Marcus Webb, the xenobiologist, and Captain Elena Vasquez as military advisor. Earth's population had no idea this meeting was even taking place. The assembly had demanded absolute secrecy until humanity's status was determined. Sarah carried with her the hopes of 8 billion souls who remained blissfully unaware that their entire future hung in the balance of alien politics they couldn't even imagine. As Sarah's magnetic boots activated to anchor her to the designated platform, she noticed the subtle shift in the chamber's atmosphere. Conversations died in clicks, chirps, and harmonic frequencies across dozens of species. The attention of the galaxy's most powerful beings now focused entirely on the small human delegation. Chancellor Vex High of the Hegemony Corps floated at the chamber's center, her serpentine form coiled around a gravity manipulation throne that bent light around its edges, her 4 amber eyes fixed on Sarah with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. The Chancellor had ruled the Assembly for over 2 centuries, and her reputation for calculating political maneuvering was legendary across civilized space. The Assembly recognizes the human delegation, Chancellor Vex High announced. Her voice transmitted directly into the universal translators embedded in every delegate's communication system. Ambassador Chen, you speak for the species that calls itself Homo sapiens. Originating from the 3rd planet of the system your kind designates Sol. Present your case for why humanity deserves membership in our ancient union. Sarah stepped forward, feeling the weight of history pressing down upon her shoulders. She had rehearsed this speech countless times, but standing here among beings whose civilizations predated human agriculture by millions of years made her mouth dry with nervous anticipation. Honorable Chancellor, esteemed delegates of the Assembly, Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Humanity comes before you not as conquerors or supplicants, but as eager students ready to join the galactic community. Our species may be young, but we bring unique perspectives, innovative problem-solving abilities, and an unmatched capacity for adaptation and growth. A ripple of what might have been laughter emanated from the krill section, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane that the translators rendered as dismissive amusement. Sarah pressed on, undeterred. In the 30 years since first contact, humanity has developed faster than light communication, fusion-powered spacecraft, and medical technologies that have eliminated genetic diseases that plagued us for millennia. We've shown we can learn, evolve, and contribute meaningfully to interstellar civilization. From her elevated platform, Counselor Thanuk of the warrior caste spoke, his voice a grinding rumble that seemed to come from the depths of a stone quarry. The massive humanoid figure stood nearly 3 meters tall, his obsidian exoskeleton scarred from countless battles across the galaxy's frontier regions. Young Ambassador, Thanuk growled. Your species demonstrates technological aptitude. This much is acknowledged. However, advancement without wisdom leads to catastrophe. The Assembly has witnessed the rise and fall of 17 species who achieved spaceflight before developing sufficient emotional maturity. Each became a plague upon the galaxy before requiring extinction protocols. The word extinction hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah felt Captain Vasquez tense beside her, the military officer's hand unconsciously moving toward her sidearm before remembering the futility of such a gesture in this place. Sarah straightened her spine and met Thaniuk's obsidian gaze directly. Counselor Thaniuk, humanity has indeed made mistakes in our brief history. We fought wars, destroyed environments, and suffered from tribalism and prejudice. But we've also shown an remarkable capacity to learn from our errors and grow beyond them. The very fact that we unified our planet and achieved spaceflight through cooperation rather than conquest demonstrates our evolution as a species. A new voice interrupted, melodic, almost singing, but with undertones that suggested vast intelligence and perhaps subtle mockery. Sage Lirelei of the ethereal collective materialized more than spoke, her thoughts transmitted as pure concept rather than language. The human speaks of cooperation. The translation rendered her communication as whispered poetry. Yet their historical records reveal constant warfare spanning their entire recorded history. They achieved spaceflight not through cooperation, but through competition between nation-states, racing to militarize the void above their world. Their first orbital platforms were weapons delivery systems, not peaceful research stations. Dr. Webb stepped forward, his scientific training overcoming diplomatic protocol. Respected Sage, while our history contains conflict, it also demonstrates our species' unique ability to transcend our limitations through scientific inquiry and philosophical growth. The same competitive drive that led to early military applications also pushed us to explore, discover, and ultimately unite as a species when we realized our common destiny among the stars. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien discussion as delegates conferred in groups, their various forms of communication, creating a symphony of clicks, buzzes, harmonic frequencies, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translators struggled to process simultaneously. Chancellor Vexhai raised one clawed appendage, and silence returned to the chamber with supernatural swiftness. Her amber eyes seemed to glow with inner fire as she regarded the human delegation. The Assembly will now hear testimony regarding humanity's suitability for membership, she announced. We call upon Investigator Zormath of the Intelligence Division to present findings from the covert observation period. A figure Sarah had not noticed before seemed to simply step out of empty air near the chamber's geometric center. Investigator Zormath belonged to a species Sarah's briefings had identified as the Shadowkin beings, whose natural ability to manipulate light and perception made them ideal intelligence gatherers. The investigator appeared as a vaguely humanoid silhouette that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the chamber's illumination. Honored Assembly, Zormath spoke in a voice like whispered secrets. Our 30-year observation of humanity reveals troubling patterns. While the species demonstrates remarkable adaptability and technological innovation, they also exhibit concerning levels of aggression, territorial behavior, and what their own psychologists term othering, the tendency to dehumanize those perceived as different or threatening. Sarah felt her heart sink as Zormath continued his report. Most significantly, our monitoring has revealed that the human government maintains numerous classified military programs that violate several assembly protocols regarding weapons of mass destruction. Their research into antimatter manipulation, stellar engineering, and quantum-level weaponry suggests a species preparing for large-scale interstellar warfare rather than peaceful cooperation. The accusation hit Sarah like a physical blow. She knew about some of Earth's classified defense programs. It would be naive to assume humanity wasn't preparing to defend itself in a galaxy full of unknown threats. But the way Zormath presented the information made Earth sound like a rogue military state, rather than a cautious newcomer trying to survive in an uncertain universe. Captain Vasquez stepped forward, her military bearing evident despite the alien environment. Investigator Zormath, every species represented in this assembly maintains defense capabilities proportional to their technological level. Humanity's research into advanced physics and engineering reflects our scientific curiosity and prudent preparation for the challenges of interstellar existence, not aggressive intentions toward other civilizations. Captain Vasquez, Counselor Thaniuk's rumbling voice carried what the translator interpreted as contempt. Your species' definition of defense is interesting. Our intelligence indicates that Earth's governments have developed weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems and conducted classified experiments in forced stellar collapse. Such capabilities exceed defense and enter the realm of galactic-scale destruction. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to formulate a response. The accusations weren't entirely false. She knew Earth's governments had indeed pursued advanced weapons research, driven partly by fear of the unknown threats that might exist among the stars. But the context was being deliberately distorted to paint humanity as warmongers, rather than a species trying to ensure its survival. Before Sarah could respond, Chancellor Vex High spoke again, her serpentine form coiling tighter around her gravity throne. The evidence presented raises serious concerns about humanity's readiness for Assembly membership, the Chancellor declared. However, there is another matter that must be addressed, the question of humanity's true origins and their relationship to the precursor ruins discovered in their solar system. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. The precursor ruins were humanity's most closely guarded secret ancient alien structures discovered on Mars and several of Jupiter's moons that predated human civilization by millions of years. The technology found within those ruins had been instrumental in humanity's rapid advancement, but Earth's governments had agreed to keep their existence completely classified to avoid complications with galactic politics. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, Chancellor," Sarah said carefully, but she could see from the subtle shift in alien body language that her deception was transparent to beings far more experienced in reading micro-expressions and stress indicators. "Ambassador Chen?" Zormath's whispered voice carried unmistakable menace. "Our deep space archaeological teams have conducted extensive surveys of your solar system. We know about the precursor sites. We know your species has been reverse engineering technology from ruins left by a civilization that vanished before your sun finished forming. The question becomes, what else are you hiding from this assembly?" Note: the chamber fell into absolute silence. Sarah could feel the weight of 1,000 alien stares, and she knew that humanity's first contact with galactic civilization was rapidly spiraling toward disaster. The secrets they had hoped to reveal gradually over decades of careful diplomatic relations were being exposed in the worst possible context. Dr. Webb cleared his throat, his scientific integrity overcoming diplomatic caution. "Honored delegates, it's true that we've discovered evidence of ancient civilizations within our solar system. Our study of these archaeological sites has indeed contributed to our technological development. However, we've approached these discoveries with respect and scientific rigor, viewing ourselves as caretakers of ancient knowledge rather than looters of abandoned technology." "Caretakers?" Sage Lirelai's voice carried crystalline laughter. "Your species has weaponized precursor technology within decades of discovering it. The quantum manipulation systems found in those ruins were designed for stellar engineering and deep space construction. You have perverted them into instruments of destruction." Sarah felt the diplomatic situation slipping completely out of her control. Everything humanity had hoped to accomplish with this meeting was crumbling under the weight of secrets exposed too soon and accusations presented without context. Chancellor Vex High uncoiled from her throne, her serpentine form stretching to its full impressive length as she prepared to render judgment. The chamber's lighting seemed to dim as if the very atmosphere anticipated her words. "The Galactic Assembly has heard enough," she declared, her voice carrying the authority of eons. "Humanity presents itself as a peaceful species seeking membership in our union, yet evidence reveals a civilization built upon military aggression, deception, and the irresponsible exploitation of precursor technology. The patterns are unmistakable. This species follows the same trajectory as the Ravagers of Epsilon Eridani and the Machine Collective of Vega Prime, both of whom required extinction protocols to prevent galactic catastrophe." Sarah's blood turned to ice as she realized what was happening. This wasn't a membership hearing, it was a trial. And humanity had already been judged guilty. Furthermore, Chancellor Vex High continued, the presence of active precursor technology in human hands presents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. The Assembly hereby declares humanity a Level 7 threat to civilization, requiring immediate containment and re-education protocols. "Wait," Sarah shouted, abandoning all diplomatic protocol as desperation seized her voice. "You can't condemn our entire species based on incomplete information and paranoid speculation. Humanity deserves the chance to prove our peaceful intentions through actions, not just words." The Chancellor's 4 amber eyes fixed on Sarah with reptilian coldness. "Ambassador Chen, your passionate defense of your species is admirable but irrelevant," The decision has been made through proper assembly protocols. Humanity will be quarantined to your solar system until such time as your aggressive tendencies can be corrected through guided evolution, or, if necessary, selective population reduction. The implications of those clinical words hit Sarah like hammer blows. Guided evolution meant genetic manipulation of the human species by alien science. Selective population reduction was a euphemism for systematic extermination of any humans deemed too aggressive or resistant to alien control. Captain Vasquez stepped forward, her hand now openly resting on her sidearm despite its uselessness in this environment. Chancellor, I formally protest this tribunal on behalf of Earth's governments and all human civilization. You've condemned us without allowing adequate defense or providing clear evidence of actual wrongdoing rather than speculative threat assessment. Your protest is noted and overruled, Councillor Thanyuk rumbled with finality. The Assembly's wisdom has guided galactic civilization for over 50 millennia. We have seen this pattern before. Human, and we know how it ends if left unchecked. Sarah felt something break inside her chest, not physical, but spiritual. The weight of failure pressed down upon her as she realized that humanity's first contact with galactic civilization had become their last contact as a free species. The decision came with brutal swiftness. Chancellor Vex-High gestured with one clawed appendage, and security drones materialized from hidden alcoves throughout the chamber, sleek, predatory machines that hummed with barely contained energy. Their scanning beams swept over the human delegation, analyzing threat levels and preparing containment protocols. Sarah watched in growing horror as the political machinations unfolded around her. Delegate after delegate rose to speak in favor of immediate action against humanity. The krill buzzed their approval in harmonic frequencies that made her teeth ache. The Silicon Collective transmitted their agreement through cascading mathematical equations that appeared as holographic displays above their crystalline forms. Even species she had hoped might show sympathy for a younger civilization voted for containment without hesitation. The motion carries by overwhelming majority, Chancellor Vex-High announced. Humanity will be subject to immediate quarantine protocols, followed by comprehensive re-education programs designed to eliminate their aggressive tendencies and remove access to dangerous precursor technology. Ambassador Chen, your delegation will be detained here, while Assembly forces implement these necessary measures. Dr. Webb stepped forward, his scientific mind still trying to find a logical solution to an increasingly impossible situation. Chancellor, surely you must understand that containing an entire species goes against every principle of sentient rights and self-determination that civilized society should uphold. The very fact that you're considering such action suggests that perhaps the Assembly itself has lost its way. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as alien outrage. Harmonic frequencies clashed against electromagnetic pulses, while bioluminescent displays flashed in patterns too rapid for human eyes to follow. The suggestion that the ancient assembly might be flawed struck the assembled delegates like blasphemy. Sage Lirelei materialized closer to the human platform, her ethereal form shimmering with indignation. Dr. Webb, your species exists for barely an instant compared to the civilizations represented here. The Assembly has guided galactic development for longer than your planet has harbored complex life. To suggest we have lost our way demonstrates the exact arrogance and presumption that makes humanity so dangerous. Captain Vasquez had heard enough. Her military training kicked in as she assessed their situation with tactical precision. 3 humans, surrounded by thousands of hostile aliens in a space station that violated the laws of physics, with security drones already moving to intercept them. The smart play would be surrender and hope for eventual diplomatic resolution. But Elena Vasquez hadn't survived 3 tours of duty in Earth's most dangerous conflict zones by making the smart play when innocent lives were at stake. Ambassador, she said quietly, activating the emergency beacon concealed in her uniform collar, I'm implementing Protocol 7. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the code. Protocol 7 was the diplomatic corps' most classified contingency. A signal that would inform Earth's governments that first contact had failed catastrophically and that humanity faced immediate existential threat from alien forces. It was also a death sentence for the delegation, as it would immediately identify them as intelligence assets rather than simple diplomats. Captain, you can't, Sarah whispered, but Vasquez was already moving. The security drones detected the unauthorized transmission and responded with overwhelming force. Energy beams lanced through the chamber's exotic atmosphere, striking Captain Vasquez's center mass. The smell of ozone and burned flesh filled the immediate area as Elena collapsed to the platform's surface, her body smoking from the precision strike designed to incapacitate rather than kill. But it was too late. The signal had already propagated through quantum entanglement networks, back to Earth's deep space monitoring stations. Somewhere in the Sol system, alarms were beginning to sound in facilities that officially didn't exist. "Medical assistance!" Sarah screamed, dropping to her knees beside her fallen colleague. "She needs help." Dr. Webb immediately began applying what first aid he could, his hands shaking as he tried to assess injuries far beyond his expertise to treat. Captain Vasquez was alive but barely conscious, her breathing shallow and rapid as her body went into shock. Chancellor Vexhai observed the scene with reptilian detachment. "The human's actions confirm our assessment of your species' aggressive nature. Even facing the authority of galactic civilization, you resort to violence and deception rather than accepting the wisdom of your betters." "She was defending our right to exist?" Sarah snapped, her diplomatic training finally cracking under the pressure. "Everything we've seen here proves that this assembly is nothing more than a council of bullies using superior technology to crush anyone who threatens your monopoly on power." The words hung in the chamber like an accusation. Sarah immediately realized she had gone too far, not because she was wrong, but because speaking truth to power in this environment would only make humanity's situation worse. But the damage was done. Investigator Zormath stepped forward, his shadow-wrapped form seeming to absorb the light around Vasquez's injuries. "The human delegation's behavior validates our intelligence reports completely. Ambassador Chen, your captain's transmission was intercepted and decoded. Earth's governments are now aware of these proceedings and will undoubtedly respond with military force rather than accepting assembly authority." Sarah felt her heart sink even further. Protocol 7 wasn't just a distress signal, it was also a warning that Earth faced immediate invasion. The message would trigger defensive measures that had been planned for decades but never tested. Humanity's response to the Assembly's containment efforts might indeed prove the aliens' point about human aggression. "You've doomed your species through your own actions," Counselor Thanok declared with something that might have been satisfaction. "When your military forces attempt to resist Assembly containment protocols, it will justify the use of maximum force to ensure galactic security." Dr. Webb looked up from tending to Captain Vasquez, his face pale but determined. "You're manufacturing a crisis to justify genocide. You never intended to give humanity a fair hearing. This entire proceeding was designed to create the pretext for destroying us." Dr. Webb, Chancellor Vexhai's voice carried ancient authority. "The Assembly has presided over galactic peace for 50,000 years. We have seen the rise and fall of countless species. And we know the patterns that lead to catastrophic warfare. Humanity follows those patterns exactly. Your presence here today merely confirms what our long observation had already revealed." Sarah struggled to understand the terrible logic driving these events. The Assembly genuinely believed they were protecting galactic civilization from a future threat. From their perspective, humanity's rapid advancement, military research, and possession of precursor technology made them identical to previous species that had required extinction. The fact that they were wrong didn't matter. Their fear had become self-fulfilling prophecy. A new alarm began sounding throughout the chamber, deep, resonant tones that seemed to come from the station's superstructure itself. The assembled delegates looked toward their various information displays as priority communications began arriving from across the galaxy. Chancellor Vexhai received a transmission directly into her neural interface, and her serpentine form tensed with what Sarah hoped was concern. "It appears that humanity's response to these proceedings has exceeded even our worst predictions," the Chancellor announced to the chamber. "Earth's governments have activated something called the Annihilation Protocol and are mobilizing forces that our sensors cannot properly analyze." The phrase sent chills through Sarah's spine. She had never heard of any annihilation protocol during her years of diplomatic training and security briefings. The fact that such a thing existed suggested that Earth's governments had been planning for this exact scenario. First contact gone catastrophically wrong for much longer than anyone had admitted. "What's the annihilation protocol?" Dr. Webb asked. But Sarah could only shake her head in bewilderment. Investigator Zormath materialized next to the Chancellor's throne, his shadow form flickering with what might have been agitation. "Our deep space monitoring stations are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the Sol system. Whatever humans have been building in secret appears to involve stellar-scale engineering far beyond what we assessed as their current capabilities." "Impossible," Sage Lirali's melodic voice carried disbelief. "Our observation teams have monitored every major human installation for decades. They lack the infrastructure for stellar engineering. Unless," Counselor Thanyuk's rumbling voice carried a new note of uncertainty, "they've been using precursor technology more extensively than our intelligence indicated. The quantum manipulation systems found in those ruins could theoretically enable rapid, large-scale construction if properly understood and implemented." Sarah found herself in the surreal position of learning about her own species' capabilities from alien intelligence reports. The implications were staggering. If Earth's governments had been secretly developing stellar-scale technology using precursor artifacts, then humanity's true defensive capabilities might be far beyond what anyone had imagined. Another alarm joined the first, this one shrieking at frequencies that made several alien species retreat from the chamber's center. Priority communications flooded in from assembly monitoring stations throughout the local galactic sector. Chancellor Vex High's 4 amber eyes began glowing with what appeared to be genuine alarm as she processed the incoming reports. The humans appear to be constructing something in the outer reaches of their solar system. Our long-range sensors indicate massive gravitational disturbances around their gas giant planets. Construction? Dr. Webb looked confused. What kind of construction could cause gravitational disturbances detectable from interstellar distances? The answer came from an unexpected source. A new voice spoke from the chamber's communication system. Elderly, gravelly, and unmistakably human. The universal translators identified it as coming from Earth itself, transmitted through quantum entanglement networks that shouldn't have existed. "This is Admiral Harrison Clark, speaking for the United Earth Defense Command," the voice said with calm authority that somehow carried more menace than any alien threat. "To the beings who have taken our diplomatic delegation hostage and threatened our species with extinction, you have made a grave miscalculation." The entire chamber fell silent as the impossible transmission continued. "For 30 years, we have known this day might come. Since first discovering that we were not alone in the universe, Earth's governments have prepared for the possibility that galactic civilization might view humanity as a threat rather than a potential ally. We hoped for better, but we planned for worse." Sarah stared at the communication system in shock. The fact that Earth could transmit directly to the assembly station suggested technological capabilities that far exceeded anything she had been briefed on during her diplomatic preparation. "You believe humanity is dangerous because of our military research and possession of precursor technology." Admiral Clark's voice continued. "You are correct to be afraid, but not for the reasons you think. We are dangerous not because we are naturally aggressive, but because we are naturally innovative. When faced with extinction, humans don't surrender, we evolve." Chancellor Vex High attempted to cut off the transmission, but her technological commands had no effect. Whatever method Earth was using to communicate directly with the station was beyond the assembly's ability to block or trace. "The annihilation protocol is not a weapon," Admiral Clark explained with terrifying calm. "It is an ultimatum. We have 36 hours to resolve this situation diplomatically, or Earth will demonstrate exactly why previous galactic civilizations chose to hide their technology rather than share it with younger species." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The assembled delegates began chattering among themselves in dozens of languages and communication methods, their confidence in assembly superiority clearly shaken by humanity's unexpected technological demonstration. Sarah looked down at Captain Vasquez, who had regained consciousness and was listening to the proceedings with growing alarm. "Elena," she whispered. "What the hell is the annihilation protocol?" Captain Vasquez struggled to sit up, her voice weak but determined. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I've got a feeling we're about to find out why humans survived every extinction event our planet ever threw at us." The chamber's lights began to flicker as the station's sensors detected something approaching through hyperspace. Whatever Earth had been building in secret, it was coming to collect its people. The approaching vessels didn't announce themselves with the typical energy signatures that assembly sensors were designed to detect. Instead, they seemed to tear holes in space itself, emerging from what appeared to be artificially created wormholes that defied conventional physics. The station's most advanced detection systems could only register them as gravitational anomalies surrounded by fields of twisted spacetime. Chancellor Vex-High's serpentine form coiled tighter around her gravity throne as emergency reports flooded her neural interface. "Impossible," she hissed. "Our sensors indicate 12. No. 18. The count keeps changing. How are they masking their true numbers?" Well, Investigator Zormath materialized beside the Chancellor, his shadow form flickering with agitation. "They're not masking anything. Each vessel appears to exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. Our sensors are detecting the same ships across several parallel quantum states." Dr. Webb looked up from where he was still tending to Captain Vasquez, his scientific mind struggling to process the implications. Quantum superposition, on a macroscopic scale? That should be theoretically impossible for objects larger than subatomic particles. Apparently, Captain Vasquez managed to say through gritted teeth, "Humanity's been doing a lot of things that should be theoretically impossible." Apparently, the chamber's main display activated, showing the approaching fleet in all its terrifying glory. The vessels defied conventional design principles. They appeared to be constructed from solid shadow wrapped around cores of compressed starlight. Their hulls shifted and flowed like living things, occasionally revealing glimpses of internal structures that hurt to look at directly. Sarah stared at the display in awe and terror. These weren't the ships that had carried Earth's first hesitant exploratory missions to nearby star systems. These were something else entirely, weapons of war disguised as vessels of exploration, or perhaps the other way around. How many humans are on board those ships? Sage Lirali's melodic voice carried undertones of fear that the translator rendered as discordant harmonies. The answer came through the same impossible communication channel Admiral Clark had used before. But this time the speaker was different, younger, female, and carrying an authority that made even the ancient Chancellor straighten unconsciously. "This is Director Chen of the Prometheus Research Division," the voice announced. "I am Sarah Chen's sister, and I'm here to collect our people." Sarah gasped in recognition. Dr. Lisa Chen had vanished from public record 15 years ago after completing her doctorate in theoretical physics. Sarah had assumed her sister had died in some classified research accident. The realization that Lisa had been working on humanity's most secret defense projects this entire time hit like a physical blow. "Director Chen," Chancellor Vex-High spoke toward the communication system. "Your demonstration of technological capability is noted. However, your delegation violated assembly protocols by transmitting unauthorized communications and resisting lawful detention. These actions confirm our assessment of humanity as a destabilizing influence on galactic civilization." Lisa's laughter came through the communication system like winter wind through broken glass. "Lawful detention? You condemned our species to extinction based on paranoid speculation and incomplete intelligence. Your assembly's idea of justice appears to be guilty until proven innocent, and proving innocence is impossible." The lead human vessel moved closer to the assembly station, and the true scale became apparent. The ship was massive, easily dwarfing the station itself, despite the assembly facility being large enough to house millions of beings. More disturbing was the way space seemed to bend around it, creating optical effects that suggested the vessel existed partially outside normal dimensional boundaries. "Your ships violate 17 major assembly accords regarding dimensional manipulation," Counselor Thanuk declared, his obsidian form radiating what the translator interpreted as righteous indignation. "The technology you're demonstrating was banned after the Void War of the Fourth Epoch. How did humans acquire such capabilities?" "We built them," Lisa replied with simple pride. 30 years ago, when we first detected your observation teams watching our planet, we realized that first contact might not go the way our diplomats hoped, so we began preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. Dr. Webb managed to help Captain Vasquez sit upright against one of the platform's support pillars. "Lisa," he said toward the communication system, "what exactly did you build out there?" "We took everything we learned from the precursor ruins and pushed it to its logical conclusion," Lisa explained. "The ancient civilization that left those artifacts wasn't trying to hide from some external threat. They were trying to escape the cycle of galactic civilization itself. The same cycle that brings young species before assemblies like this one for judgment by their elders." The implications of that statement sent ripples of unease through the assembled delegates. The precursors were legendary throughout galactic civilization, an ancient species that had achieved technological godhood before mysteriously vanishing without a trace. The idea that they had deliberately chosen to leave rather than being destroyed by some catastrophe challenged fundamental assumptions about galactic history. "Impossible," Sage Lirelay protested. "The precursors transcended physical existence. They evolved beyond the need for material reality." "No," Lisa corrected with cold certainty. "They got tired of younger species being destroyed by older ones who were too afraid to share power. So they left to find or create a galaxy where evolution and growth weren't crimes punishable by extinction." Sarah felt pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place in her mind. The precursor ruins in the Sol system hadn't been abandoned randomly. They had been left deliberately as a gift to whatever species eventually evolved on Earth. A test to see if humanity could learn from the mistakes of galactic history. The main display shifted to show the interior of the lead human vessel, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The ship's command center looked like something from humanity's most ambitious science fiction, but with touches that were unmistakably alien. Precursor technology had been integrated seamlessly with human engineering, creating hybrid systems that combined the best of both civilizations. Director Chen appeared on screen older than Sarah remembered, with silver threading through her black hair and eyes that had seen things no human was supposed to witness. She wore a uniform that mixed human military styling with decorative elements that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. "Hello, Sarah," Lisa said with a sad smile. "I'm sorry your diplomatic mission had to end this way. We really did hope the assembly might be different from the previous galactic councils that destroyed promising young species." "Previous councils?" Chancellor Vexhigh's amber eyes flared with indignation. "The Galactic Assembly is the oldest continuous civilization in known space. We have no predecessors." Lisa's expression hardened. "Really? Then I suppose you've never heard of the harmony of spheres, or the concordance of minds, or the unity of purpose? All previous galactic governments that made the same mistakes you're making now, destroying younger species out of fear rather than helping them grow into partners." The chamber erupted in confused chatter as delegates tried to process historical references that didn't appear in any of their records. If Lisa Chen was telling the truth, then galactic civilization had undergone multiple cycles of collapse and renewal, with each iteration somehow forgetting the lessons of its predecessors. "How could you possibly know about civilizations that predate our oldest records?" Investigator Zormath demanded. "Because the precursors left us more than just technology," Lisa explained. "They left us their history, the complete record of galactic civilization spanning millions of years, including the rise and fall of 7 previous galactic governments that all destroyed themselves through the same cycle of fear and stagnation." Dr. Webb struggled to his feet, his scientific excitement overcoming the dangerous political situation. "Lisa, are you saying that galactic civilization has been caught in a repeating pattern of growth and self-destruction?" "Exactly. Each cycle follows the same pattern. Younger species achieve spaceflight, older species view them as threats, conflict erupts, and eventually the entire galactic civilization collapses under the weight of its own paranoia. The precursors were the survivors of the 7th cycle, and they decided to break the pattern by leaving rather than perpetuating it." Chancellor Vexhigh's serpentine form had gone completely rigid. "Even if your claims were true, which they are not, it changes nothing about humanity's threat status. Your aggressive nature and advanced technology make you dangerous regardless of historical context." "Our aggressive nature?" Lisa's voice carried dangerous laughter. "Chancellor, we've spent 30 years watching your observation teams catalog every human conflict, every military research project, every defensive preparation. But did your investigators tell you about our global literacy programs? Our medical aid to impoverished regions? Our international cooperation on climate change and resource management? Sarah watched the Chancellor's expression shift as Lisa continued. Did they mention that Earth's unified government was formed not through conquest but through voluntary association? That we've eliminated extreme poverty, developed sustainable energy systems, and established educational programs that ensure every human child has access to knowledge regardless of their circumstances? Your social achievements are irrelevant, Counselor Thainok rumbled. The weapons you've developed pose an existential threat to galactic civilization. The weapons we've developed, Lisa corrected, are the only things standing between humanity and the extinction you've already decided we deserve. Would you prefer we had remained defenseless? The human fleet continued to approach the assembly station, and it became clear that they were taking defensive positions rather than threatening attack formations. The vessels spread out in a protective formation that could shield the station from external threats, while also preventing any escape attempts. Director Chen, Chancellor Vex High said with forced calm, "What exactly do you want from this assembly?" "Simple," Lisa replied. "We want our people back, safe and unharmed. We want formal recognition of humanity's right to exist without interference. And we want the assembly to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, destroying young species isn't the best way to ensure galactic stability. And if we refuse?" The question hung in the chamber like a death sentence. Sarah could see the calculation in the Chancellor's eyes whether the Assembly's military forces could destroy the human fleet before it could retaliate against their civilian populations. "If you refuse," Lisa said quietly, "then we'll demonstrate why the precursors chose to leave rather than fight. We'll show you what happens when a species that survived every extinction event their planet could throw at them decides that survival requires the complete transformation of galactic civilization." The main display shifted to show the outer edges of the Sol system, where massive construction projects were visible around Jupiter and Saturn. Structures that dwarfed planets hung in space like geometric flowers, their purpose unclear but their scale terrifying. "What are those?" Dr. Webb whispered in awe. "Gateways," Lisa explained. "Permanent wormhole generators powered by stellar engineering. We can now move entire fleets instantly anywhere in the galaxy. We can evacuate our entire species to uninhabited systems beyond your reach. Or," she paused, letting the implications sink in, "or we can begin the 8th cycle of galactic civilization with partners instead of masters. The choice is yours, Chancellor, but you should know that whatever you decide, the age of older species controlling younger ones through fear is over. Humanity has graduated from the galaxy's kindergarten, and we're not going back." The chamber fell into stunned silence as the assembled delegates realized that everything they thought they knew about galactic power structures had just changed forever. The silence stretched for long moments as the implications of Director Chen's words sank in among the assembled delegates. The power dynamic that had governed galactic civilization for millennia had suddenly, irrevocably shifted. The age of ancient species dictating terms to younger ones was ending, whether peacefully or through conflict. Chancellor Vex High was the first to break the silence, her serpentine form uncoiling from her gravity throne as she processed the new reality. "Director Chen, your threats are noted. However, the Assembly commands the loyalty of over 7,000 member species across the galaxy. Do you truly believe 12 ships, regardless of their technological capabilities, can challenge an empire that spans star clusters?" Lisa's image on the main display smiled with genuine sadness rather than arrogance. "Chancellor, you're still thinking in terms of the old paradigms. This isn't about military conquest or empire building. This is about evolution. Galactic civilization either grows beyond its current limitations or repeats the same cycle of collapse that destroyed 7 previous iterations." Dr. Webb managed to stand fully upright, his scientific curiosity overcoming his physical discomfort. "Lisa, the historical records you mentioned, how extensive are they? Do they explain what causes these cycles of collapse?" "Completely extensive," Lisa replied. "The precursors left us everything: star charts mapping the rise and fall of civilizations across millions of years, technological specifications for sciences we're only beginning to understand, and most importantly, Sociological analyses of why each galactic government eventually destroyed itself. The main display shifted to show complex holographic models that seemed to extend beyond the screen's boundaries. Sarah found herself looking at what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of galactic history, with glowing lines tracing the expansion and contraction of civilizations across space and time. The pattern is always the same, Lisa explained as the display highlighted recurring cycles. A galactic government forms, usually led by the oldest and most technologically advanced species. They establish protocols for integrating younger species, always designed to maintain the existing power structure. When a young species shows too much potential or grows too quickly, they're labeled as threats and either contained or destroyed. Sage Lirale materialized closer to the display, her ethereal form shimmering with what the translator interpreted as fascination and horror. But surely some young species were genuinely dangerous. The Ravagers of Epsilon Eridani, the machine collective of Vega Prime, these were real threats to galactic stability. Yes, they were, Lisa agreed. But they became threats because the galactic government of their time refused to help them develop responsibly. Instead of guidance and partnership, they received suspicion and containment. When you treat a species like a threat for long enough, eventually they become one out of sheer desperation. Captain Vasquez struggled to her feet with Dr. Webb's help, her military training asserting itself despite her injuries. Director Chen, are you saying that every dangerous species in galactic history was created by the very governments that claimed to be protecting civilization from them? Not everyone, Lisa clarified, but the vast majority. The precursor records show a clear pattern: species that received mentorship and partnership from galactic governments developed into peaceful, productive members of civilization. Species that faced suspicion and containment invariably became the threats their elders feared. The implications of this revelation hit the assembled delegates like a physical shock. If Lisa was telling the truth, then the Assembly's entire approach to managing younger species was not just morally questionable, it was actively counterproductive, creating the very threats it claimed to prevent. Counselor Thon Yuk's obsidian form radiated what the translator interpreted as deep unease. Even if your historical claims are accurate, Director Chen, it doesn't change the fact that humanity possesses technology capable of destroying star systems. How can the Assembly ignore such capabilities? You're absolutely right, Lisa said, surprising everyone. Humanity does possess weapons capable of destroying star systems. We developed them because 30 years of observation convinced us that the Assembly would eventually declare us a threat, regardless of our actual intentions. We chose to be a threat with the power to defend ourselves, rather than a threat waiting helplessly for extinction. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the full implications of her sister's words. Humanity hadn't just prepared for this scenario, they had planned for it, with the cold calculation of a species that had learned the harsh lessons of galactic politics before ever leaving their home system. Furthermore, Lisa continued, we're not the only species that's reached this conclusion. The Ashanti Collective, the Quantum Dancers of Rigel, and the synthetic minds of the Canis sector have all made contact with us over the past decade. We're not alone in questioning whether the Assembly's version of galactic stability is worth preserving. Chancellor Vexhi's 4 amber eyes flared with alarm. You've been conducting unauthorized diplomatic contacts with Assembly member species. That violates 17 major accords regarding accords that we never agreed to, Lisa interrupted. Humanity was never consulted about these rules before being subjected to them. And neither were many of the species that supposedly benefit from Assembly protection. Did you know that over 2,000 member species have requested permission to withdraw from the Assembly over the past century? Permission that has never been granted. Incidentally, the chamber erupted in shocked chatter, as delegates realized that many of their assumptions about galactic unity were being challenged. The Assembly had always presented itself as a voluntary association of species working together for mutual benefit. The idea that members might want to leave but were being prevented from doing so suggested a very different kind of organization. Investigator Zormath materialized next to the Chancellor's throne, his shadow form flickering with agitation. Director Chen, our records show no formal withdrawal requests from member species. Of course they don't, Lisa replied with bitter laughter. Because withdrawal requests are classified as destabilizing communications, and redirected to containment protocols. The species that made those requests found their communications networks monitored, their leadership replaced by assembly-approved administrators, and their populations subjected to guided development programs. Dr. Webb looked around the chamber with growing horror as he realized what Lisa was describing. "My God," he whispered. "It's not a galactic government, it's a galactic empire. You've been managing species like livestock." The accusation hung in the air like a physical presence. Sarah could see the defensive reactions forming among the delegates as they confronted the possibility that their civilized assembly might not be as benevolent as they believed. "The assembly has maintained galactic peace for 50,000 years, Chancellor Vex High declared with forced authority. "Whatever methods we've employed, the results speak for themselves. No major interstellar wars, no species-ending conflicts, no technological disasters that could threaten multiple star systems." "No," Lisa agreed. "Instead, you've had thousands of minor containment actions, selective population reductions, forced technological regression, and the systematic suppression of any species that showed signs of independent development. You've created peace through stagnation, stability through fear." The main display shifted again, this time showing what appeared to be a real-time view of the outer Sol system. The massive structures around Jupiter and Saturn were clearly visible, but now they were active, generating energy fields that seemed to tear holes in space-time itself. "What are you doing?" Sage Lirelay demanded, her melodic voice carrying crystalline alarm. "We're opening the way," Lisa explained. "Those are permanent gateways, wormhole generators, that can connect any 2 points in the galaxy instantaneously. We've spent 30 years building a network that will allow free travel and communication between star systems without requiring assembly permission or oversight." The implications hit the assembled delegates like a tsunami. If humanity could provide independent, faster-than-light travel to any species that wanted it, then the Assembly's control over interstellar civilization would crumble overnight. The monopoly on galactic transportation that had allowed them to isolate and control individual species for millennia would be broken. "You're talking about the complete destruction of galactic order," Counselor Thanyuk rumbled with what might have been panic. "We're talking about the evolution of galactic order," Lisa corrected. "The Assembly's version of stability has lasted 50,000 years. But it's built on the systematic oppression of every species too young to defend themselves. That's not order, that's tyranny with good public relations." Captain Vasquez managed a pained laugh despite her injuries. "Director Chen, you're essentially offering to revolutionize galactic civilization. What makes you think it will work any better than the current system?" "Because we've learned from the failures of 7 previous attempts," Lisa replied. "The precursor records don't just document what went wrong, they include detailed analyses of what could have gone right. We know what mistakes to avoid." Sarah found herself caught between pride in her species' achievements and terror at the magnitude of what they were attempting. Humanity was essentially declaring independence not just for themselves, but for any species that wanted to join them in rejecting the Assembly's authority. "Director Chen," Chancellor Vex High said with dangerous calm, "you're describing the most fundamental change to galactic civilization since the Assembly's founding. Such a transformation could not occur without massive disruption and conflict." "You're absolutely right," Lisa acknowledged. "Change on this scale will be disruptive. The question is whether that disruption comes from species choosing to evolve beyond the current system, or from the Assembly attempting to maintain control through increasingly desperate measures." The chamber fell silent as everyone contemplated the choice being presented: evolution or stagnation, growth or control, partnership or dominance. "What exactly are you proposing?" Chancellor Vex High finally asked. Lisa's image smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since the conversation began. "Simple. The Assembly can choose to adapt to the new reality we're creating, or it can become irrelevant. We're not trying to destroy galactic civilization, we're trying to help it grow up." The main display showed the gateway network activating around Sol, and Sarah realized that whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had just offered the universe a choice between freedom and control, and the response would determine the course of civilization for millions of years to come. The moment of decision arrived with the soft chiming of communication alerts throughout the chamber. Reports were flooding in from assembly monitoring stations across the galaxy as species after species detected the activation of humanity's gateway network. What had seemed like an isolated diplomatic crisis was rapidly becoming a galaxy-wide transformation. Chancellor Vex High received priority communications directly into her neural interface, and Sarah watched her serpentine form grow increasingly rigid as the full scope of the situation became clear. The Chancellor's 4 amber eyes flickered rapidly as she processed information from thousands of sources simultaneously. "Director Chen," the Chancellor said with forced calm, "our monitoring stations are detecting unauthorized wormhole apertures opening in 17 different star systems. Species are already beginning to use your network without assembly authorization." "Correction," Lisa replied from the main display. "Species are exercising their right to free movement without requiring permission from a self-appointed galactic authority. The Ashanti Collective has just sent their first trade delegation to the Quantum Dancers of Rigel in over 3,000 years. The synthetic minds are finally able to share their technological advances with organic species who were previously forbidden from accessing their star system." Dr. Webb struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. "Lisa, you're talking about the collapse of the entire system that has governed galactic civilization for 50 millennia. How can you be certain this won't lead to chaos and warfare?" "Because we've spent 30 years testing it on a smaller scale," Lisa explained. "The species that made contact with us over the past decade have been using prototype gateway technology to establish independent trade and cultural exchange networks. The results have been remarkable technological advancement, cultural enrichment, and peaceful cooperation on a level that the Assembly's managed isolation never achieved." Captain Vasquez managed to stand without assistance, her military instincts recognizing the strategic implications. "You've been running a parallel civilization right under the Assembly's nose. How many species are involved?" "Currently, 47 species have active connections to the Free Gateway Network," Lisa replied. "But the number is growing rapidly now that the primary network is operational. We estimate that within 72 hours, over 300 species will have independent faster-than-light capability." The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical shock. The Assembly's control over galactic civilization had always depended on their monopoly over interstellar travel and communication. If hundreds of species suddenly gained independent FTL capabilities, the entire power structure would collapse within days. Sage Liralai materialized closer to the human delegation, her ethereal form shimmering with complex emotions that the translator struggled to render. "Director Chen, even assuming your intentions are benevolent, you're gambling with the stability of galactic civilization. What if conflict erupts between species that have been isolated for valid reasons? Then we'll help them work through their differences," Lisa replied simply. "The Assembly's approach has been to prevent conflict by preventing contact. Our approach is to prevent conflict by fostering understanding and providing mechanisms for peaceful dispute resolution." "And if that fails," Counselor Thonyuk demanded, "then we'll face those challenges as a galactic community instead of as subjects under the Assembly's authority," Lisa answered. "The precursor records are very clear about this. Civilizations that grow through cooperation and voluntary association are far more stable than those maintained through control and isolation." Sarah found herself marveling at her sister's transformation. The brilliant but awkward physicist she remembered had become a leader capable of reshaping galactic civilization. The weight of responsibility involved was staggering. Lisa was essentially betting the future of countless species on humanity's interpretation of ancient historical records. "Director Chen," Sarah said, addressing her sister directly for the first time since the communication had opened, "what about Earth? What about the 8 billion humans who have no idea this is happening? You're committing our entire species to a course of action they never consented to." Lisa's expression softened as she looked at her sister. "Sarah, Earth's governments have been planning for this possibility since first contact. Every major population center has secure briefing materials ready for immediate distribution. By the time you return home, humanity will know that we're no longer alone in the universe, and that we've chosen to join galactic civilization as equals rather than subjects. You're talking about the complete transformation of human society," Dr. Webb observed. "The psychological impact of learning that we're not alone, combined with the political implications of joining a galactic community. Will be challenging, Lisa agreed. But humans have always been remarkably adaptable. We've survived ice ages, plague outbreaks, world wars, and technological revolutions, learning that we have neighbors among the stars and allies in building a better galactic civilization will be the greatest adventure in human history. Chancellor Vexhai had been silent during this exchange, processing the avalanche of reports reaching her from across the galaxy. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of 50,000 years of tradition facing inevitable change. Director Chen, the Assembly could mobilize military forces to shut down your gateway network. We have the technological capability and the legal authority under galactic law. Yes, you do, Lisa acknowledged without fear. And if you choose that path, you'll be starting the 8th cycle of galactic collapse right on schedule. The precursor records show that every previous galactic government fell when they chose military suppression over peaceful adaptation to technological and social change. The main display shifted to show a tactical analysis of the situation that made Sarah's blood run cold. The Assembly's military forces throughout the galaxy were already moving toward strategic positions, preparing for potential conflict. But the human gateway network was allowing rapid coordination between species that had previously been isolated from each other. The balance of power was shifting in real time. However, Lisa continued, there's another option. The Assembly could choose to evolve along with the rest of galactic civilization. Instead of being a governing body that controls species, you could become a coordination body that facilitates cooperation between equals. You're asking us to voluntarily surrender our authority, Investigator Zormath observed. I'm asking you to trade authority based on control for influence based on service, Lisa corrected. The species that respect the Assembly do so because of your experience and wisdom, not because of your ability to isolate and punish them. That respect could form the foundation of something much more valuable than the current system. Dr. Webb looked around the chamber with new understanding. You're proposing that the Assembly become what it claims to already be, a voluntary association of species working together for mutual benefit. Exactly, Lisa said. The infrastructure exists. The institutional knowledge exists. The relationships exist. The only thing that needs to change is the willingness to share power instead of hoarding it. Captain Vasquez assessed the tactical situation with professional detachment. Director Chen, what happens if some Assembly species choose to resist this transition? You're essentially forcing them to accept a complete restructuring of galactic civilization. We're not forcing anything, Lisa replied. Species that want to maintain the old system are free to do so. They just can't force other species to participate. If the Assembly wants to maintain isolation protocols for its members, that's their choice. But they can't prevent other species from choosing differently. The elegant simplicity of the solution struck Sarah with sudden clarity. Humanity wasn't trying to destroy the Assembly or force change on unwilling species. They were simply providing an alternative and letting each civilization choose its own path forward. Chancellor Vexhai uncoiled from her gravity throne, her serpentine form extending to its full, impressive length as she contemplated the decision before her. Director Chen, you're asking the Assembly to accept the end of galactic civilization as we've known it. I'm asking the Assembly to accept the beginning of galactic civilization as it could be, Lisa corrected. 50,000 years of stability built on stagnation, or the start of something genuinely new built on growth and cooperation. The chamber fell into contemplative silence as delegates across hundreds of species considered the choice before them. The old system offered security through control, predictability through limitation. The new system offered freedom through risk, potential through uncertainty. What guarantees can you provide that this transition won't lead to chaos and conflict? Chancellor Vexhai asked. None, Lisa replied honestly. Change always involves risk. But the precursor records show that the greatest risk is refusing to change when change becomes inevitable. Evolution or extinction, those are the only options available to any civilization. Sarah looked around the chamber and realized she was witnessing a moment that would be remembered for millions of years, the point where galactic civilization chose between growth and stagnation, between partnership and dominance, between the future and the past. Chancellor, Sarah said, addressing the Assembly's leader directly. My species has made its choice. We're willing to work with anyone who wants to build something better than what currently exists. The question is, what choice will the Assembly make? The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone had expected. 3,000 species voted to accept the transition to a voluntary association model. 2,000 species voted to maintain the current system. 2,000 species abstained, choosing to wait and see how the situation developed. Chancellor Vexhai announced the result with dignity that earned Sarah's respect, despite everything that had happened. The Galactic Assembly hereby recognizes the right of member species to choose their own level of participation in interstellar civilization. Species wishing to maintain current isolation and oversight protocols may do so. Species wishing to participate in the Independent Gateway Network may do so. The Assembly will adapt its role accordingly. Dr. Webb smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Chancellor, I think you've just made the wisest decision in galactic history. Perhaps, the Chancellor replied. Or perhaps we've just chosen a different form of chaos. Time will tell. The human fleet began to withdraw from the Assembly Station. Their mission completed, without firing a single shot. As Sarah prepared to leave the chamber that had nearly become the site of humanity's political execution, she reflected on the lesson her species had just taught the galaxy. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't the ability to destroy your enemies, it's the ability to turn them into partners. The age of galactic empire was ending. The age of galactic community was about to begin, and humanity had just proven that sometimes the youngest voices in the room have the most important things to say about building a better future for everyone. As the human delegation prepared for transport back to their fleet, Sarah looked back at the assembly chamber one final time. The delegates were already beginning to form new alliances and discussion groups as they contemplated their role in the transformed galaxy. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in 50,000 years, it was also truly free.